Hello Internet, welcome to my channel. My name is Gretchen Winch and this is Winchcraft, which is a channel in which I make things and then share those things with you. So I wanted to make a channel for two reasons. Number one, I've been sewing my own clothes since 2015 or 2016. I already had some sewing experience and I decided in, I think it was 2015, to start patterning and sewing my own clothing since I kind of have trouble finding things that fit me and that I like and that I can wear to work. So patterning and sewing my own clothing solves that problem right away. But I found that since I have such a busy job, I was really only making one or two pieces a year. So I figured that if I make a channel, that's kind of my motivation to make one project a month or two projects a month, since I work best with deadlines and this is going to be my deadline to make things and share them with you. The other reason I wanted to make a channel is because when I'm sewing my own clothing, I work primarily with stretch fabrics, which is what most people are already used to wearing on a regular basis. I would say probably 90% of the clothing that's manufactured and sold today has some element of stretch in it. But most of the sewing patterns that I see that are available are intended for woven fabrics, which are not stretchy. So since I make patterns and sew clothing that is intended to be used for stretch fabrics, I thought that that might be useful for anyone else who wants to do the same thing in order to create clothing that is in a fabric that we're already used to wearing, but is something that you can tailor specifically to your style, your job, whatever it is that you want your clothing to do for you. So, let's get started. So, in this video we are going to do some history bounding. History bounding is essentially wearing clothes that are historically inspired without full-on looking like you're about to go to the Renfest. Now, if you want to live your life in Renfest garb and wear that every day, you go for it, you do you, but most people have jobs that aren't going to allow for that. So history bounding is a really great solution. Basically, it allows you to take different time periods, styles, and you can almost mix and match too if you'd like, and you can choose what you think are the best elements of that style and add those elements into your wardrobe. Here's the reference picture I'm going to be using for my design, and I'm going to pick elements out of the gowns shown in this reference picture in order to create my own design. So this is an illuminated manuscript. It's from France and it's dated to 1407 to 1409. We see these three noblewomen here assisting the goddess Diana in a hunt. I'm going to be focusing on the noblewoman in the lower right-hand corner, but there are some elements that are common to all three of the noblewomen's dresses. So the first one is this kind of scooped neckline that comes almost off the shoulder. You can see that in all three. And then the other one is the nipped-in waist, and then a flared skirt that starts flaring kind of below the hip. I'm going to be creating a tunic top out of this, so I'm going to take that neckline and then the silhouette, and then I'm also going to be picking one of the sleeve styles. So there's two sleeve styles shown on these noblewomen's gowns. One is kind of the long, tight sleeve. I'm going to be doing the second style of sleeve where it's very flared and it's about the length of a single CVS receipt, although I think I'm going to shorten it, so maybe we'll go for the length of, let's say, half a CVS receipt. Hello! I promised that I did actually record myself drawing this, and then I was looking through the footage, and that part of the footage was super blurry, so I decided to cut that out, and you are going to get me explaining the drawing instead of me drawing the drawing. Sorry about that. Here it is. So, as you can see, we've got some differences from the reference picture. Obviously this is a shirt, not a gown, kind of like a tunic, so it does flare once we get past the waist. It's going to fall probably to about mid-thigh, and it's going to be longer on the sides and in the back, shorter in the front. I don't really feel like I captured the sleeves very well. They don't look as flowy on the drawing as I think I'm going to want them to be on the finished product, but I can go ahead and work on that once I get into the mock-up stage. This is just kind of to get my ideas fleshed out, get them on paper, and see where we're going from here. So we've got the kind of the fit and then the flare, the long sleeves. They're shorter than the hemline, but they are going to come down probably to within about 6 inches of the hemline. And then we've got the wide, almost but not quite off the shoulder top. So here's our drawing. I'm happy with this version of the drawing, and let's go to the mock-up. Okay, so now that we've got our design, let's take a look at the fabric. We are working with a dark red cotton jersey knit, really popular color in the medieval period, so I think it's going to be working really well for a medieval inspired history bounding top. I do not have a cutting table set up, so that means that since we're about to cut fabric, it is floor time. Alright, so we are going to take a look at our pattern. This is the front and back at the same time. So what I've done is I drew the whole thing out. I've taped it together with painter's tape because in a house full of adults, we somehow don't have any Scotch tape, like at all. So painter's tape it is. And then I've drawn the back neckline and then the front neckline. I only did half of the front neckline because I want to make sure that I don't, get the curve wonky on the other side. I drew the front hemline all the way across. It's kind of wavy, but who cares? Because that's not going to be what it looks like when we actually cut out the fabric. And then for the back hem, what I always do for the back hem is fold the pattern in half and then kind of do just a bunch of lines until I find one that I like, and then I cut it out with my paper scissors, not my fabric scissors, on that line, and I open it out. So this is kind of the whole length and width of the thing, but it doesn't show us where the seam lines are going to be. For that, we need the pattern itself. So this looks like it's just a bunch of fabric, but it's actually kind of my master dress pattern. The master dress pattern that I usually use has 6 panels. So there's a center front cut on the fold, center back also cut on the fold, and then there's different side panels. So for the design, basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this paper pattern and we're going to almost combine it and kind of like rejigger it together with this fabric pattern in order to cut out the pattern for the real shirt out of this muslin. So as I mentioned before, I'm making this out of a cotton knit. Mock-ups are your friend, but in terms of muslin, we're going to have to cut it on the bias because that's when we're going to get like that nice stretch. So let's scoot this stuff out of the way. This is going to be the cutting surface, and I always like to use scissors as opposed to a rotary cutter because that way I don't need a cutting mat. So here's how this is going to work. It's going to be a little bit wonky, but that's okay. That's why we're making a mock-up instead of just cutting this out from the regular fabric on the first go. So I'm going to throw down the paper pattern, very, very graceful as it wafts around, and find where I want the front neckline to be and the front hem, and then I'm going to pull out my actual pattern piece. And because we're cutting this on the bias, we can't really cut it on the fold. And then I'm going to mark where I want the front center seam to stop. Because we are essentially Frankensteining different patterns together, I just don't really like working with bought patterns. I like to make my own. I think it kind of helps me to wrap my head around it a little bit more. Alright, so then we're going to line this up. So we've got our pretty dark, heavy line for where the front hemline is. And now we're just going to start cutting out our pattern pieces. pieces all cut out. Laid them out with the front pieces on this side, back pieces over here. You can see the, oh, sorry, I'm in the way. You can see the kind of like wide off the shoulder neckline right here. It's almost not quite off the shoulder, and there's a couple of things that I can already see that I'm going to have to fix. And then this pattern piece, I cut it out according to the pattern that I have, but it looks kind of wonky to me, like this weird kind of almost an S shape. So I don't know if that's going to work out, and you know what, if we have to fix it, we'll fix it. You may be wondering, where are the sleeves? That is a great question. I have no idea where my sleeve pattern is. So I'm going to have to look for that, have a fitting, try it on, and hopefully I will find my sleeve pattern soon. Hello! So it is a couple days later, and I have found my sleeve pattern. It took me a lot longer to find it than I thought it was going to, so here's my sleeve pattern. So as you can see, this one, unlike my other pattern, is not put together with painter's tape, it is put together using electrical tape. The reason for that is I made this pattern a couple years ago. We were just about to move, and I needed a pattern for a sleeve. I realized I had already packed mine, so kind of threw this one together using electrical tape and tracing paper. And now it's the only sleeve pattern that I can find at all, even though it's been like a year and a half since we moved. So, oh well, it's a sleeve pattern that I have, it's a sleeve pattern that I'm using. So, I'm actually combining the sleeve pattern with the pattern that I used for the front and back of the shirt itself. Here's how that's going to work. So the top of the sleeve, the armscye part, that's not changing at all, but what I'm doing is that I'm combining it with the bottom part right here of the shirt front and back pattern, so that it's going to add fullness starting about halfway down the sleeve, and it's going to come down into this extremely wide, like slightly pointed but extremely wide sleeve with a lot of volume and fullness. So that way I'm going to take just my regular sleeve pattern and make it into a sleeve pattern that seems more medieval. Alright, so I finished my mock-up. I'm pretty pleased with it overall. It definitely has kind of the fit and flare feel that I wanted to have when I'm looking at, you know, it's supposed to be kind of the top half of a medieval gown, so it does flare pretty generously down into the hem. Really happy with that. Because this is the first time that I've worked with this pattern that has 4 side pieces instead of 2 side pieces, and I was kind of worried that I wasn't going to get enough fullness in the sides, but I definitely did. There are 2 things I want to fix. Number 1, when I'm looking at the shoulder seam here, it's coming in farther than I really would like it to be. Probably going to take off like maybe ½ an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch on the actual shirt, because I wanted to make sure that it's going almost off the shoulder, just like those medieval gowns do. Second thing that I want to fix is the sleeve. It's wonderful, it's very full, it's way too long for my day job. So, you know, I've almost made it too accurate in terms of the sleeve, where they did have medieval ladies' gowns that dragged on the floor and the sleeves go over the hands. Sometimes the sleeves go all the way to the floor. I can't deal with this in everyday life. So one of the nice things about Historybounding is I'm just going to change this. So it's medieval inspired, but it's not it's not the world's most extra sleeves, because I can take them in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it probably like maybe 4 inches back, and then I also have to fix the way that the curve of the sleeve lies, because I intended it to have kind of the point of fullness down here, and I ended up with having it, you know, from side to side instead of top to bottom. So I'm going to have to play with the sleeve a little bit, and what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video here. Next video I will cut the fabric, pin, stitch, all of that, and then once I've gotten the body of the shirt done, then I'm going to take my sleeve mock-up and I'm going to put the sleeve mock-up on the finished body and see how that works, kind of play with it, see what kind of things I need to do to fix the sleeve before I end up cutting it out in the actual fabric. So thank you so much for joining me. I'll have my next video posted probably in the next 1 or 2 weeks. Give it a comment if you liked it, if you have questions. I can try and address those questions in the next video. And yeah, thank you so much. Bye!